Hey guys, Jordan here from the NFA. Welcome. And shortly we're going to have Sheldon here, and we're going to have a little talk with you guys tonight. As he's logging on. Hey Sheldon. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
There, can you hear me, Jordan?
There we go. A little bit of technical difficulties there.
Yeah.
So how's it going?
Pretty well. It's been a rainy day out here in British Columbia, and it's been kind of a gloomy week following our federal election. But here we are.
What did you think of the results?
Well, actually, it's a pretty dangerous situation for us. Certainly a majority Liberal government would have been very bad. But here we have the situation of a group of parties in Parliament where most of them are, in fact, anti-gun. We have a prime minister who's going to try to govern without a coalition, or so he claims. I don't think that's going to be possible. He's going to need support for a money bill. But the thing he's got over people is that he knows that some of them just can't afford to do another election right now, so they're going to have to support him on money bills, like the budget, for example, because that's if you vote against the budget, that defeats the government, and that'll force an election in our parliamentary system. Having a fixed election date doesn't really matter in a parliamentary system. What matters is your ability to use the tactics and strategies that Parliament provides. And one of them is you vote against money bills and the government falls. Now, if the government falls right away after election, there's going to be an electorate out there which is going to be fairly annoyed and will probably seek to give a mandate to the party they think would best make the government. So it will likely change the government, and it may well give Trudeau a stronger mandate. Right. So it's a bit of a mess.
So do you really think that the assault weapons ban that Trudeau said really affected Toronto?
I think the only place in the country that actually voted for banning guns is Toronto. I think that his pleas for this gun ban talk he's had, and I don't like the term assault weapons. I don't think that's an appropriate term. It's certainly his language, not ours. I think his plan to ban modern sporting firearms, modern semi-automatics, and to start allowing the ban of handguns in municipalities is not broadly supported by most Canadians. Most Canadians recognize it for what it is, an expensive waste of time that does not solve any crime problems.
Right. And it clearly shows that it really wasn't an issue in this election. I mean, if it was, they would.
Well, it sure was. It sure was for a bunch of us, wasn't it, Jordan?
I mean, for us gun owners, yeah, we were worried.
People were very engaged, and I mean, the results of the election, I think, speak for themselves. You see, the culture of fear that was engendered in some large centers was supported by votes, but that was not successful in lots of places, and a lot of key, loud presenters on behalf of the government's gun ban agenda are no longer with the government. You've got Robert Nault's gone, Senator Pratt resigned, and one of our direct targets in our own efforts, Ralph Goodale, is also gone. And there were several other Liberals who were prominent in this who were also lost their seats, particularly in British Columbia. So there's certainly no Liberals in Saskatchewan or in Alberta. And I think those results speak for themselves. This is a very divided country, and there's no appetite to accept Trudeau's brand of government in a good part of the country.
Right. Yeah, we got some users giving us some comments right now.
Great. Hi out there.
So
hope everybody's doing okay.
They're all coming back as Facebook users. I don't know why their name's not showing up, but. Awesome.
Well, that's our demographic, though, Jordan. Us older folks are all on Facebook. Anybody over 20, 25, really. But nonetheless, yeah, we have some significant challenges. We need to start identifying members of Parliament who are going to be swayed by our points, our arguments, our logic, our evidence that firearms bans actually do not serve the public interest and are not going to be effective in really doing what the claimed object of all of this is, which is to stop crime, because it's pretty clear that criminal activity is not going to be stopped by you or me or those many millions of Canadian firearms owners turning over their guns.
Right. We have somebody else here. Will C71 pass order in council now?
Well, C71 is passed in legislation. There are a number of things that need to be done to bring it into law, and certainly those will start to be done as the legislative agenda moves on. But we've got bigger problems than C71. C71 is certainly an issue, but we've got a prime minister now who's talking about firearms bans, and so that's the real thing. And order in council with relation to firearms bans is a really serious concern, because if Trudeau is asked to form a government by the Governor General when he goes to see her, if he has not done so already, well, what's going to end up happening is he's going to have that ability to start flying out with orders in council and start to ban things. And that's a big concern. And I mean, as we head into the early part of December, which is their traditional grave dancing ceremony, we're going to probably see them announcing legislation at that time. This is their pattern that they have followed for decades.
Right. Hey guys, for the guys that are joining us right now, for some reason it's not giving your name or your profile, but if you want to say, hey, it's coming from whoever, and then your question, that'd be awesome. And feel free to ask us a question. It does show up and we will post it, and we can definitely talk about it too. All right. So keep the questions coming.
Maybe some people okay, hoping the first bill is a private member's bill requiring Trudeau's releasing privilege to the RCMP, and being has ND. I don't see the rest of the question.
All votes for all at the committee.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll have to see. It's certainly the case that if all other parties got together, they can outvote the Liberals. That's what the nature of a minority government is. That would be an interesting pattern if that happened. Like if he decides he's going to go all in, all alone, and you see the what would really be an unholy alliance of the Bloc, the Green Party, the NDP, and the Conservatives all getting together to outvote the Liberals. Well, that would be a very interesting form of government, and I think we'd see some very, very strange things happening.
Right. Oh, we have Sheldon, Missouri.
Oh, hey, Sheldon. Will a minority government stall out Trudeau's agenda? Well, it depends on how willing people are to risk an election. And I think on these bills, the problem we have is there are several parties on the left which are not inherently pro-gun, but they have people in them who are pro-gun. And I think what's necessary for us to do is to be talking to those members of particularly the NDP and the Bloc who are from firearms owning constituencies and who may have people who are going to express their concerns about what's going on. So we're going to do that. I mean, in this election, the NFA did quite a bit. We didn't stand on the corners blowing our horns and selling our pencils, but we did invest a substantial amount of money in directed, targeted advertising in the closing days of the campaign to key ridings to make sure that we were going after targeted members of parliament. And I was looking at our results today, and we did pretty well. We got lots and lots of views of our messages, and they were in areas where we were very much targeting not specifically a firearms demographic, because from our perspective, most of the firearms community is well aware of the issues generally, but a demographic that was a bit older, has money, has security, understands and reads about the news and the law, and is concerned. And our advertising seems to have been tremendously successful, particularly in targeted ridings where we were looking at removing Liberals. And where the message was not successful was in the Greater Toronto area. So,
Hey, Sheldon, I'm gonna bring Charles Zacha on board, our
that'd be great.
Lobbyist.
Hello, Charlie. How are you doing?
Give him a second here. Hey, Charles.
Hey guys, how's it doing?
Really well, Charles. It's great to see you. How you recovered from the election?
No, I'm still crying in my beer.
Well, it's time to stop crying, stop drinking beer, and to pack up the kit and go talk to members of Parliament in Ottawa and start kicking butt and taking names.
Absolutely, and you know what? I've actually been doing that already. I have a little network here, a lot of people that I've known already from, past conservative events and conventions and whatnot. I've talked to them, and of course, they're sympathetic to our cause. Now it's just a matter of getting Parliament reconvened so that we can get some work done officially there. But in the meantime, we're lining up meetings and we're consulting with them. Even today, I went to a meeting in Hamilton and I was speaking with Peter Dykstra, who was the Hamilton Mountain CPC rep that unfortunately wasn't elected either. But he's very sympathetic and he seemed a little down in the mouth. I'm going, there's nothing to be down in the mouth about. This is exactly what happened with Harper. In that cycle where,
Yep.
Harper took away the, the minority from the Liberals, and in the next cycle of the election, which happened shortly after that, he got a strong majority and basically was in for 2 terms, 10 years.
And
So
that's one of the dangers I was highlighting with Jordan is that it's dangerous to govern with a minority as if it's a majority. However, the other side of that coin, or the other edge to that blade, if you like, is that if you do defeat this government early on, many people will react by supporting what they see to be a government that will provide stability, because nobody in Canada likes to go to election after election after election. We don't like that sort of a situation. And so it's a very delicate dance that everybody's going to be in right now. And I think that Mr. Trudeau would be very, very careful. If he was smart, he's going to be very, very reluctant to engage in any radical changes. Now, he's already been throwing out hints that he's going to start doing something towards the end of the November to meet up with their traditional grave dancing commemorative ceremony, and I think that we're going to see something out of his office soon, whether that be orders in council, which he could easily do to start banning things, or preparation of legislation. And I think what we're going to have to do is very much work to divide up any chances of coalition support for legislation. And he knows he's not going to be able to pass a lot of legislation with this government divided as it is, and this country divided as it is.
Well, that kind of brings us up to our next topic: no mandate for gun ban.
Well, he doesn't have a mandate, and that's a great topic, Jordan, and thanks for selecting it, because there is no mandate for this government to do any sweeping changes on firearms legislation, or for that matter, really anything else. He has a very strong mandate from a very small part of the country that happens to have a large number of people concentrated in a few major centers. He has a mandate there, but he doesn't have a mandate for most of the map. And that, for him, is a huge problem. He's not going to be able to find a cabinet minister in Saskatchewan or Alberta. That's quite telling. And he'll probably have a bit of a trick finding one of any caliber in Vancouver. I mean, he had a pretty good one in Jody Wilson-Raybould. Now, she's liberal, don't get me wrong. I'm not touting her virtues there, but at least she had principles and ethics, and was able to try. She did the best she could and what she thought she was doing to protect her government as she saw it. And she's managed to hold her seat. That's pretty impressive. It's as I well know, it's not easy to win as an independent, and she certainly had broad popular support for her ethical stand that she chose. But no mandate for gun bans, that's for sure. He may try to pull something, but I think what will happen is, and though I would never advocate non-compliance, I will tell you that there will be a lot of it. People are not going to be willing to give up their property. They're not going to be willingly handing over their hard-earned money to the state. They're in the form of their firearms or their accessories. They're just not going to do it. They'll get small numbers of compliance like they have in New Zealand, but the greater bulk of people are simply going to say, no, this is not okay. We're not going to do this. We're not going to be engaged in a social re-engineering exercise by this particular government to try to destroy a sport and an activity, a way of life that is more popular than hockey. So it's just not going to happen.
Do you think they're definitely going to try, though?
Oh, well, we'll see. He's certainly got pressure from all those nice folks in Toronto who voted for him, but he certainly doesn't have any support from Mr. Sheldon Clare or Charlie Zatch or Jordan Vandenhoff out there in Ontario. So, or any of the rest of the tens of thousands of NFA supporters and the millions of Canadian firearms owners. There's just
I,
no
I think
support.
I think I can definitely say for every firearms owner, our property is not for sale.
No, and you know, this whole idea of buying back, right? What a joke! Like, you can't buy back something you didn't sell. Like, I didn't buy my firearms from the government. You know what? I could have made them as far as they know, and I'm certainly not willing to be parting with my property, which I enjoy and I partake in using, and giving this up for some arbitrary figure of money, which is not worth it. I'm not taking my 30 pieces of silver here to sacrifice my way of life, and I don't believe that most people will. And like I said, I don't advocate non-compliance. I mean, you know, we have laws; we have to follow the laws. But I would strongly suspect that most people will not be supportive of unreasonable new firearms legislation. What do you think, Charles?
Well, I think you just have to look at Quebec. They recently instituted the long gun registry, and
Right.
basically put out a
We're taking
command.
that to court.
And we're taking that to court, but they ordered everybody out there to re-register their long guns, and
Hasn't
basically
happened.
non-compliance of almost 95%. That 5%
Yeah.
that's out there is more or less the result of the system that cannot be skirted through the commercial retail end. And I expect the same thing to happen, especially out west, where they're already buzzing about having no representation in Ottawa. So, you know,
Taxation without representation. Well, that's fighting
exactly.
words.
So, you know, this is not an opportune time for them to do it. We'll see whether or not they pull the trigger or not.
Yeah.
I'm hoping they'll delay it.
Confiscation without representation.
And
That's
we're not
what this is.
about
There's
teeth.
no mandate.
There is no mandate, right? And
No.
actually, there's no just reason either, right?
Absolutely
All
not.
the empirical evidence out there points not at this, right? I've had some discussions with some of the liberals out there. I asked them for empirical evidence to support the claim that gun bans actually work and keep our people safe out there from determined criminals, and they don't have any.
They got nothing.
There's nothing to produce, right? It's based
No.
on emotional sentimentalism, and actually, it's kind of insulting to the voter out there, especially people that are not abreast of the firearms issue in general, because they're exploiting their, I guess if you want to put it, their ignorance of the subject matter, whipping them up with fear, and they're voting accordingly. They're lying to them, and they're being duped.
Well, I think a good number of people were being lied to. Well, they lied to all of us, but they certainly fooled quite a few. And you're right, Charles. It's an emotional based argument. It has nothing to do with evidence, either empirical or fabricated or anything else. It's just nonsensical. And some of the big spokespersons of that lie have paid for it by losing their seats. And I think
Absolutely.
Robert Nault, I think of Ralph Goodale, they paid for their lies with their seats. And we saw that for a few other Liberal MPs who went by the wayside in this election as well. Then, of course, there were a few Conservatives who were unsuccessful. It was saddened to see Lisa Raitt lost her seat. She's long been someone who is at least an ear for us. And, we'll have to see how we build new relationships with you going full-time as our in-house lobbyist. And we're definitely looking forward to seeing how successful our efforts with you at this point of the spear are going to be there, Charles.
You know, I'm hungry to get to work for our members out there. There's lots of people to educate. I know there's lots of MPs out there that do get it, and they're already on our side.
Yes.
Now we need to get
even some in the caucuses and the progressives. I think there are NDP members of parliament out there who understand our plight. I knew a few who ran. Like one who ran locally here was a past secretary of our Rod and Gun Club.
Yes.
And her husband was a past president of the Rod and Gun. She ran for the NDP. So I know there are NDP supporters out there who do get it about firearms.
You know, unfortunately, those progressive parties are notorious for whipping their MPs and squelching any kind of freedom of speech. But everybody has a conscience, right?
Yeah.
And in our representative democracy, they're supposed to be representing their constituents. And if they're not doing that, they're going to have to weigh the pros and cons in their own conscience and vote accordingly.
I agree. I think that's absolutely right, Charles. And I think we're going to have our work cut out for us. I think that this is a one of the most frightening and interesting periods in our history. We have a very arrogant prime minister who thinks he's won an election when he really lost.
Mhm.
We have an opposition who has built a tremendous amount of support out of that. Didn't get the majority government they were hoping for. Didn't get a minority, but they did increase their number of seats, and they were the single party to get the largest share of the popular vote. So that represents a large chunk. Unfortunately, what it also means there's some 65% of the rest of the country does not share the views of that group. So we have some problems and challenges to overcome.
Absolutely. Another thing this election showed me, anyway, that I think the strength of the resolve of law-abiding gun owners out there. I mean, the NFA, we see from the numbers now that we had great effect in our targeted areas, and we did what we promised to do, right?
Our advertising was tremendously successful.
It was.
I think my visit to Regina to embolden some of the firearms clubs out there was a success. I talked to gunnies out in Regina. I told them we were targeting the Regina area, that we had seats we figured we could take, and we targeted that area and we took those seats. And those people in Regina showed up and they said no to Mr. Goodale's agenda. And I think that NFA members can be very, very grateful and happy that their donations, their support for our activities made a difference there. They really did. We made a difference in the Lower Mainland in Vancouver. We made a difference in Alberta even. We thought, oh, we'll put some effort into these little red areas here too. And sure enough, and I mean, there was certainly a wave of resentment. I don't think we can take credit for every little victory, but we have our piece of it for sure.
No doubt about it. But I've never seen the law-abiding gun community so galvanized and so staunchly working together to protect their private property and their civil liberty. I mean, it's a threatening time, but usually in this kind of situation, this is when people get together in unity and we work together.
Well, some of us anyway. It is inspiring to see that there were so many people who were well informed and willing to share our message and get it out there to make sure that we found supportive candidates, that people took them to the nomination committees. I can do shout outs to members across the country, and I think of Hardy Staub, who worked for Kerry Lou Finley out in Surrey White Rock. Stalwart NFA field officer, showed great leadership, really put in a strong effort. Your own efforts, Charles, yours, Robert Bracken's, Jordan's, and many, many others who stood up for their local candidates to make sure they elected really solid pro-firearms, pro-freedom, pro-rights individuals to be their representative in Ottawa. My hat's off to you. I am really proud of the people that are in this organization. I find you personally inspiring every day. When I feel a little, when I'm feeling down some days, when I'm getting another personal attack or something, I think, this is okay. I can take this because look at all this good work that's going on.
Absolutely. And our job basically is to replicate ourselves. So yep. I implore the membership out there to basically emulate what we're all doing. I mean, it's a passionate mission that we're all on, right? So get out there, get involved with your CPC candidate. I know the election's over, but another one's coming, and it's coming soon.
Yes, we'll have an election very likely within 18 months to 2 years, especially with the situation we're in. And I've got to say, we've got to be ready for it. We have a number of things that we're looking at in initiatives to try to move forward. We have another meeting to go to later on this evening, in which we'll be discussing some of our plans and strategies dealing with the situation as it exists, and how we can get it to a situation that we wish existed. And we're locked and loaded and ready to roll. We've got some activity now. Like I say, we don't stand on the street corner blowing our horn and doing drive-bys or anything like that. We've got our own way of doing things, which is a little bit more, I think, surgical, directed, intelligent, than some approaches I've seen, and I think that we're seeing some very solid results as a result of it. And I got to say, Charles, you're absolutely right. We've got to replicate ourselves, and we've got to look for those who are going to take up this torch and fight when some of us are no longer around to do that. I mean, I'm not going to do this job forever. I started as a volunteer doing this in the 80s. I've seen some successes. I've seen some failures. I mean, one of my personal successes, I think, is the fight against Bill C-80 when Kim Campbell wanted to go much further than she actually did. And we stopped that. We couldn't stop everything she was doing, but we had some success. But again, there needs to be more young blood coming up, and that has a good understanding and context for the history that we've all had to endure to this point, and just not understand and make them understand that it isn't just what's gone on recently that's a problem. It's a whole system that's been a problem for a very long
Absolutely.
time.
You know,
Jordan,
I think
what
it's
do you?
important. Sorry, I just want to just glom onto that. And I think it's important to repeat that this resistance that people are putting up to these bad laws is not in vain. The effort that we're putting forth is having an impact. There's no reason to pack it up and comply with this, some of these bad regulations and law right away, because they're going to find themselves in a situation where they're going to, like Quebec has, where it's non-compliance, and they're going to have to think about how they're going to redress this. They're going to have to either back off, or they're going to have to go maybe a little bit more draconian, and they're actually going to expose themselves for the authoritarian people that they really are.
Yeah, and I don't think police officers support this. I know a fair number of police officers, and I don't know any of them that want to go knocking on your door or my door and say, "Hi, we're here for the guns." I don't
Definitely not
I don't
happening.
see any support
No.
for that, and
They're terrified.
yeah, they do not relish that idea. I mean, it is an era that we're living in where we are heavily taxed. We are at taxation saturation. We are in a situation where you have cries for independence and separation, particularly from Alberta. Most of these, I think, will fade as people calm down and realize that elections can provide solutions to these problems. But at the same time, these are real concerns that people in Ottawa are going to have to address. They have a very divided country. It is not a mandate. It is not unified. It is not something to deal with. I see one question is, how do you become a field officer to help the NFA? Well, we're always looking for good people. And, if you're interested, I encourage you to contact one of the directors in your area, or send a note to our office and talk to Ginger. You could probably email her at ginger@nfa.ca, and she can probably get you all the information you need about our field officer program and how we can put you to work in supporting, helping grow, and informing people about the NFA. So I hope that answers that question. Yeah, we need all the help we can get, and I know my greatest dream is that we could shut this entire organization down because it's not needed anymore.
Amen.
That would be wonderful. Then we could all go to the range and go shooting. We could go out and pack a pistol in the wilderness for protection from wildlife if we need to. We could just go on with our lives in peace without harming any others, and enjoying our property and our experiences and our families without any threat of statist intervention on our lives. I'm all up for that. But it's not the reality of where we are.
Yeah, unfortunately, Sheldon, I think you're right about that. I mean, we are the proverbial canary in the mine shaft, and they've carved us out and targeted this community like they have with other communities in the past. The gay community, the black community in the past, in terms of legislation, and those are all bad laws. We're no different, right? So
you're absolutely right. Canary in the coal mine is a very good analogy, because I think the firearms issue, like you believe, and we've talked about this before, Charles, it's an issue that indicates behavior on other matters. Because if they want to take your gun, they probably want to take a bunch of other stuff too,
that's
rights,
right,
freedom, and so on.
That's it exactly. So this is a greater symptom of a bigger problem out there. The central government is getting bigger and more powerful, and is now emboldened because it's been allowed to, infringe on your civil liberties. And here we are now defending our freedom.
Yeah. Well, and it's at the point where it's no longer about trying to make deals and compromise. There's no compromise with these people. They want a piece after piece of the same loaf, and pretty soon we're left with crumbs and then nothing. And it's time to quit agreeing to throw some gunnies under the bus to think you're saving other gunnies. That's not what happens. I mean, I remember going to speak to trap sections and Ducks Unlimited back in the late 80s and early 90s and telling them that these guys who want to take away some of these people's handguns or modern sporting rifles, semi-automatic, they're the same people who want your shotguns. They don't like any of this stuff. And for them to say, well, we don't want your hunting guns, well, actually, there's not really any difference between somebody's hunting rifle or somebody's modern sporting rifle or someone's handgun. They all do the same thing. They all move a projectile downrange. And as far as they're concerned, they don't like any of this stuff, but they're prepared to take a phased approach to get rid of all of it. And that's what they've been doing. I know. I've been growing up seeing it since I was a teenager. When I used to be able to walk downtown with my rifle in my hand to go to the range, no carrying case or anything. I'd walk down to the police station, head down to the basement, and we'd shoot targets all afternoon. Sunday afternoon, I got stopped by a policeman once. He asked me where I was going. I told him I was going shooting down at the range at the basement of the police station. And he goes, "Well, have a great day." Nowadays, it'd be a boot in the throat and a muzzle in my mouth.
Exactly. Yep. And once again, I think a lot of that is been sensationalized by the mass media, who love to, like you said, tap dance on bodies in the streets after mass shootings, and it exacerbates the problem, right?
Yeah.
And it perpetuates the tyranny that is directed towards us.
I think so.
It's a really big problem.
There's a question coming up. Where do I send a donation to help the NFA keep fighting for our rights? Well, thank you. That's wonderful. Donations may be sent to our Edmonton office. And I don't know if you've got the address right handy there, Jordan, but it's let's see if I got one of my cards around here somewhere. I usually carry a few of them because my mandate from our office manager is to get rid of my business cards. But if you could just type that address up there for the people.
Give me a second.
Jordan, that'd be great. Okay. But anyway, you were saying there, Charles?
Oh, just that the mass media, it has a big role to play in sensationalizing the misuse of firearms and directing the blame towards us. They're not listening, and I think what's important, and a lot of the like the provincial government here in Ontario, and and other governments around the world, and what they're doing is they're skirting mass media by actually making their own news. They'll bring up their own channel and speak directly to their constituency, and we're more or less doing that now.
Well, I think it's pretty funny when some of the mass media they're so tied to images and quick snippets that they're using images of domestic activities to show war. Like, for example, they wanted to show the Turks invading Syria, so they pulled up some Knob Creek footage of the machine gun shoot at Knob Creek and put that out and said, "Hey, this is here are the Turks invading Syria." And the people at the shooting club are going, "Hey, that's our shooting club. That's not Syria. That's not Turk invasion. That's just a bunch of folks having a good old time at the range." It's ridiculous.
I actually got a good laugh out of that video when I saw it.
Well, and I got to say, there are lots of very good reporters out there who are diligent, who do try to get the story, and who really do care about trying to show some credibility. Unfortunately, editorial policies with some of the big media, the funding exercise that Mr. Trudeau did by donating a whack of money to selected media outlets before the election, with our tax dollars, by the way, I think those things are really reprehensible. But when you do find reporters that support us, make sure you support them. Give them everything they need. And it's up to us to have good media releases so that we do their job for them. We've got good, simple, snappy titles, and we give them the information they need to publish. And I mean, I think I think our efforts this last election are quite laudatory, and it's worth it for us to brag a bit about it. We put a fair bit of effort in. We targeted to the end of the campaign. We put a heavy effort at the end to try to reach those people who were wavering after listening to scandal after scandal after scandal and thinking that maybe there was one more reason they needed to change their vote. And maybe they saw our videos and our sidebars and our special messages, and that maybe swayed some people.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention to the person that wanted to give a donation, if you donate in $50 or more, you get an entry into our Big Gun donation drive. So every $50 earns you a ticket for the Lynx GM6, the big 50 cal.
Yep. And you can donate online at www.nfa.ca. We have a donation capability there, as well as the contact numbers at our website will get you to our office, and you can call them up, and they're happy to take donations over the phone and do any of that sort of thing as well. So there's lots of ways to help support NFA. And guys like Charlie, who's going to be heading to Ottawa with his armor and his with his sword and buckler ready to do battle. I mean, and more power to you, Charlie. I'm very excited about the opportunity you've been given to try to make a real difference. I mean, you've been a stalwart fighter for firearms rights for decades. I remember when I first met you, I thought, who's this guy? He seems pretty enthusiastic, and maybe you've got to cool that enthusiasm. But in fact, you've always doubled down on your enthusiasm and your passion, and that's been a good thing. And I think that giving that energy, this renewed sense of purpose and direction, it's really a dream opportunity to make a difference. And I know you're going to do well.
It is, and
so excited.
And it's not about me per se. I am your voice. I am the voice of our membership and all the people that are not associated with this as well too. So, this is really a mission for freedom, for private property and our individual rights. And that's what's really motivating me, right? So,
exactly.
And I promise to do my best there. I'm not gonna do this half-heartedly. We have a timeline here that we have to have some impact in, and I will do my best to do that.
I know you will, Charlie. And this isn't an organization of saviors and messiahs. This is an organization of people who roll up their sleeves and get the job done. It's a team effort. There's no one person who's got a monopoly on making sure everything happens right or anything like that. This is a team effort, and we have a team that is doing. I see there's a member there who's been joined in 2015, and I very much thank you for that. We like any organization, we have had our ups and downs over the years, and some of them have been a bit rough and ready and rocky. But you know what? We've never lost focus of our mission. Never, not for a nanosecond, even in the face of all sorts of naysayers and ne'er-do-wells. We've always maintained our focus, and we're going to get the job done.
And to that point, I mean, we've been doing this for a long time, and we've seen what the NFA can do. We're not frivolous with the generous money that our members send us in donations and membership fees, etc. And we focus in, like you said, on the heavy lifting that needs to be done. Sometimes it's not glamorous, but that's where you really have the impact.
And I've really got to hand it to our staff too for their diligence in supporting the efforts of the directors, our new executive director, our field officers out there, and our members. And they have a very strong mandate and structure. I mean, it is not possible for someone like me to misappropriate or misdirect or misuse any of our resources or anything, because we have a very clear process which prevents that. And
that's right.
We have
with
safeguards and everything else. So I'm very, very happy to have been a part of this team, which has professionalized the organization in the last 10 years. And we stand second to no other group, organization, or lobby in the terms of our effort and our professionalism.
Well, like you said, I mean, we're the truly national gun lobby out there, and lately we've been actually going international as well too, because we know that the source of a lot of this tyranny is bleeding across our borders from everywhere. You've gone to the UN, I've gone to the UN. We've seen the railroading that goes on with some of their policies there, how they do not listen and how they have an agenda in mind, and they're going to try to hoist this on as many unsuspecting countries as possible. And that we stood up there more or less alone and
Yes.
rejected the whole idea, went on record and told them that this is unacceptable. And I think our members really appreciate that and know that a lot of these ideological overreaches are coming from international sources, and we need to be there as well.
That's very true. I mean, the NFA has been a member of the World Forum on the Future of Shooting Activities for almost a couple of decades now, and we've been a participant at the UN, has under that umbrella group for a while. And in the last several years, we became our own non-governmental organization, or NGO. So we are able to go on our own right, say our own stuff, give our own speeches that are not vetted or anything like this. We can go and say what we want to say. We can go and say things that some of our brother and sister organizations would like to say but can't. And we're able to be that outspoken lone voice in the room with millions of people standing behind us, to say things that are not popular in those world forums, as you have done and I have done, and others like Robert Brackett, Fred Delory, when he went to the United Nations on our behalf. We've gone there many times to confront these tin pot dictators and tyrants who invoke gun control legislation to disarm their people and would have the West and these bigger, more producing countries to do the same in their countries. And we're seeing this pressure to do that here. We've seen what's going on in New Zealand, and we have said resolutely, no, this is not okay. We are not going to allow this. So, I've been glad we've been able to recognize this. I'm just saddened we have to have this fight. I'm saddened that there are so many evils out there in the world that rely upon a disarmed populace. And, I'm not going to let that happen in this country.
And to that point, I'm begging our membership to get out there and get people that are not a member to join us, because we need to build this movement, especially before the next election, so that we're even stronger, so that we can take on, the task and the mantle that's at hand here, usher in a strong conservative majority, and then that's where the real work begins. I've talked to Andrew Scheer, and I've told him that yes, we expect you to repeal C-71, but that's not where the work stops.
We want a lot more than that.
Absolutely.
You and I have talked about that as well. And I think that the thing we have to understand is that the Conservatives are our most friendly national party. They need a lot of work. They need us to work with them and educate them and to move them more towards more sensible legislation, to do a full review of the Firearms Act, and to make sure they start repealing some of this nonsense that we've had to suffer for the last 50 years. C-68, nonsense, every word of it. Kim Campbell's C-17, garbage, every word of it. There's a bit of tweaking that needs to be done with the old C-42 as well, frankly. As you remember, I had some critical comments about the aspects of that. And then the old C-51, the one that brought in the FAC and the classification system, and the old 68 legislation. That has to all be looked at in the cold light of day and reassessed, reviewed, and we've got to end this torturous language that is our firearms control system.
Absolutely. You know what? And I think once we turn that corner, the Canadian population out there is going to appreciate the efforts that we put in here, because then we'll actually put into place effective measures to control violent crime. Violent crime will never go away, right?
No, but it never will.
Let's use the resources that we have, the limited resources that we have, and direct it to the actual problem so that we can at least keep it under control somewhat, right? Blaming us for the misdeeds of other people out there is nonsensical. It's irrational. And we talked about this before. This is just basically vote pandering. I get that. But, they've built bureaucratic empires that cost billions of dollars now to basically support this. Those billions could go elsewhere into other solutions that are actually effective.
I quite agree. And I think that we really have our work cut out for us. And I'm cognizant of the time, Jordan. I don't know what you've got planned for us, but we do have another meeting to get to in a little while here. And go and hash
Right.
out and solve all the world's problems.
So I'm just,
How long? How long do we?
I'm just going through some of these questions here, and I've got a
Sure.
good one. I've got a good one, but I'm not going to put it on the screen because it does have some foul language in it. Do you think, with all the gun owners, do you think the votes? Where were the votes? How is Trudeau still in power?
Well, I think the gun owners came out and voted. I think one of the problems were that there were some divided votes with the Maxime Bernier mistake, and that did cost Conservatives probably 7 seats, and it also created a negative sort of pressure against Andrew Scheer, which did not help his efforts in trying to form a visible public alternative to the Liberals. So I think Maxime's petulant child play, which is all it was, did cause more damage than the seat count reflects. And I hope that we've seen the end of that. Now, having said that, there were messages that the PPC had that I think need to be listened to, because it does represent a set of issues and concerns that are part of the conservative and right movement in this country that need to be listened to and dealt with. We have lots of different conservatives who have been ignored for a long period of time by successive conservative and liberal governments. And these include some of the social conservatives and even fiscal conservatives have been their cries for reducing the national debt and making sure we have no deficit spending. Some of these cries have not been as heated as much as they should be. I mean, even Stephen Harper, who is himself, I would say, a Keynesian economist, which would surprise some people, he emphasized, in good times that are good, you pay down the debt. Right? Government intervention is fine in some respect, but you got to pay down this debt. And we've got this situation here where we've got a bunch of tax and spenders who are running things and thinking that this could go on ad infinitum, and it can't. People are going to say no, like they are saying now in Alberta.
Absolutely. Just to the poster's question, though, it's a fair point. Even with this election, I mean, there's a lot of people that came out, especially in the advanced polls, but disproportionately, the non-voting bloc was still the majority, right? So, there's
you will
there's a lot
always
of
have a bunch that don't care.
there's a lot of potential out there, but I'm now looking at more of a micro level in terms of, as the the user sort of alluded to, that we have all these gunnies out there, and a lot of them are not affiliated with any gun organization. So once again,
Most
I
firearms owners in this country are not members of even a gun club. There are something like 3.5% of all the firearms owners in Canada are a member of a club or an organization that purports to support their rights. So that leaves something like 96.5% that are just the greater unwashed out there, and some of whom probably didn't even vote. But I like to think the government. I think that the informed gunny vote did come out this election. The problem is there is another set of people out there who did not come out to vote, or voted the wrong way, or were overwhelmed by progressives in the particular area that they're in.
For sure. Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens in the next cycle, which I predict will be within a year or year and a half. I can't see it going much longer than that, given the arrogance of Trudeau. He may try, but I mean, the zebra can't change his stripes.
Yeah, well, the problem that's there is that parties like the NDP and the Bloc and so on, they don't have a lot of money to fight another election right now. The Conservatives probably have money to fight an election now. They do. And the Liberals probably a bit less so. But there's a very, very much there would be a lot of resistance to having an election right away, because I think what you would see there is a much more support for the Liberals, because people would say, oh, we don't want another election, we want stability. So this guy's got the most seats right now, let's go with that. And so there's going to be pressure on all of the parties to try to deal with that circumstance.
Well, that may be an interesting tack for the Conservatives to take, because I know that even my own EDA, we have a lot of money still sitting in the bank, so we're ready to pull the trigger again on election tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think that's the same with the EDAs I'm familiar with as well, Charles.
Yep. So we're ready. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah. I sent myself a donation into the party here the other day. Anyway, I think are there any other questions, Jordan, that need an answer?
No, but I think we're getting the
hint that we got to go to our call.
Yeah, we got to do our conference call. So this has been very productive. We've actually been on here for 54 minutes now, so that's pretty good. I think we should do this a lot more and get more interactive with our members.
Absolutely.
Sounds great. Thanks very much, guys. We'll talk to you in a minute.
Have a great evening.
All right, guys.
Bye-bye.